Hi, my name is Paddy Hirsch. I'm a senior editor at Marketplace, and today I want to talk about inflation. A lot of people are worried about inflation. They say that the government's policies, the stimulus policies, and also the Fed's programs for putting money into the banking system have created a situation where we're going to have massive inflation in the country. Now, there's a big debate about this. Okay, some people say it's definitely going to happen. Some people say it might happen. Some people say there's no chance it's going to happen. So there's a lot of debate about whether or not we're in for inflation right now. So I'm not taking a side on this issue at all. What I would like to do, though, is try and explain a little bit about what people are worried about. Okay, so inflation. Let's take an example. Here's our friend Bill. All right, Bill's a happy chap. There he is. And Bill's a trucker, actually. There he is. I know that all truckers don't wear hats like that anyway, but Bill's a trucker, and Bill loves his cereal. Okay, so he goes to the store once a week, and he picks up a box of, let's say, Lucky Charms, just for a gig. Okay, so every Monday he picks up his box of Lucky Charms, and it costs about $3. Okay, but one day he goes in for his Lucky Charms on a Monday morning, and suddenly he finds Lucky Charms are up to $4. What? Inflation, he thinks. Okay, now clearly the price of Lucky Charms has been inflated. Okay, but that's not necessarily what we mean by inflation. When people talk about inflation, they're talking about an index called the Consumer Price Index, okay, the CPI. Okay, now the CPI is a collection of it's based on the price of a number of goods and services, and we're talking about everything from education and communication, through apparel, through food and beverage, a whole host of things, cost of fuel, cost of transportation, a whole bunch of things, and the CPI takes the cost of these things and finds a bunch of averages, and it comes up with a number, and based on that number, you can tell whether or not you've got the cost of living essentially is rising or falling. And if it's rising, people talk about inflation, and if it's falling, people talk about deflation. Okay, people can get very worried about either one if they're going in sort of large numbers. So if you had high inflation, which say during the 70s was like 7.5%, people would be very worried about that. We're looking at sort of 2 or 3% at the moment right now, pretty much every year. So if it went sort of above 5%, people would start to get worried. And if it sort of drops dramatically, people also start to get worried, and that's deflation. But we're more interested in inflation right now. Now, when people talk about hyperinflation, okay, we're not talking about 7.5% like we had in the 70s, although that was very high inflation comparatively. When people talk about hyperinflation, we're talking about kind of Weimar Republic type hyperinflation, or West African type inflation, where you're going to hundreds of percent, okay, almost on a daily basis, where the value of money just drops to zero. Hyperinflation. People say it's possible, but I don't think we're talking about those kind of numbers. Anyway, so I mentioned before that the thing that people are worried about right now is about the amount of money that the government is pumping into the financial system, in fact the system generally, and they're worried about the effect of that increase in the money supply, as it's called. Because the inflation of Lucky Charms, okay, doesn't necessarily, can come from a number of things. Say the corn that's used to make Lucky Charms, I'm assuming there was corn in there, the price might go up, okay, so that would increase the price of the Lucky Charms. Or the price of sugar, and we know there's lots of sugar in Lucky Charms, that might go up, so that might increase the cost of the cereal. Okay, that would obviously factor into the CPI, because cereal is part of food and beverage, so we might see the CPI move as a result of the increase in the cost of cereal, but it's not necessarily, that's the effective, or the obvious effect of inflation rather than inflation itself. Okay, but what we're saying now is we're saying the government, good old Uncle Sam here, here he is, he's pumping vast amounts of money into the, is that Uncle Sam? Anyway, he's pumping vast amounts of money into the system, okay, trillions of dollars, some people say, maybe as much as $10 trillion, okay, goes into the system. And people say, well, if you pump this excess money into the system, it's going to flow through, it's going to come to a guy like Bill here, okay? His wages are going to increase, he's going to rush out, he's going to feel flush with cash, and he's going to start spending. And he'll be like, yeah, instead of one box of Lucky Charms, I'll take 3. And the Lucky Charms people see that he's buying more cereal, so they're like, oh, this guy's flush with cash, we can push up the price of cereal because he can afford it. And then you start to see prices rise because there's too much money, okay, chasing the goods within the system, okay? So why is inflation still, comparatively low right now, between 2 and 3%? Well, the reason is, okay, because the money is actually not making its way. It's not making its way through the system. Okay, right now, Bill, say he gets paid, you know, 50K a year. Okay, he's not his money. He isn't getting any more money right now because there's less business going on in this recession that we're probably still in, or maybe not, depending on your point of view. He's not getting paid any more money because his business is not doing any more trucking. So he's not getting paid any more money. So the only way he is going to increase his purchasing power, okay, is to go out and borrow. So he's going to go to the bank. And what happens when you go to the bank manager? Well, we all know the expression we get from the bank manager. Here he is. No, this guy's not lending you any money, okay? So the banks aren't lending to individuals in the way that they were before. Remember the credit crunch? Credit crunch still exists, it's still crunched. People are not getting the money that they might want from the banks. Some people are, but most people aren't. So there's no more money coming into Bill's pockets, either from his employer or from the bank, all right? So in other words, okay, the money that's flowing through the system from Uncle Sam, this $10 trillion, is going to the banks, but the banks are not handing it on to individual customers, which is why we're not seeing, okay, inflation right now, because the money is not going through the system. The banks are actually sitting on it, you know, in their big vault, okay, that's full of money, okay, it's not really getting passed on, and it's just helping to prop those guys up. Even the stimulus money that the Obama administration is putting into sort of infrastructure and products and things like that is not filtering through to the extent that it's actually increasing prices, okay? So that takes care of inflation now. But what about inflation in the future? Because people are saying this $10 trillion, okay, if this remains in the system, okay, and the economy starts to recover, what's going to happen? Well, the economy starts to recover, you know, the banker starts becoming a lot more friendly, okay, maybe he is going to start to pass money on. So maybe that money does get started to pass on to Bill. Maybe he gets another 10K a year from the bank. Maybe he gets another 10K a year from his employer. Suddenly he's 20K a year richer. He can then start to go out and spend. Okay, so as the economy picks up, if this money remains in the system, it's going to increase the purchasing power of consumers, this is the theory, and drive up the cost of goods, and then you've got inflation. Okay, so that's why people say we are setting ourselves up for rampant inflation in the future, because there's so much excess money in the system right now, I mean a serious amount of excess money, that unless it's siphoned back off as the economy recovers, okay, we're going to have huge purchasing power, vast amounts of money sloshing around the system, people flush with cash, going out, yeah, give me 50 boxes of Lucky Charms on a Monday morning. You're going to start to see inflation rising. Okay, so people say the challenge for the Federal Reserve and for the government is to siphon that $10 trillion out of the economy as the economy starts to recover. And if they don't do that, then we're in for perhaps not hyperinflation, but very, very serious inflation, and that's going to leave us all very badly needing a drink, which, by the way, is going to be very expensive.